Her job was to provide mental health services for those who needed it. Then she found herself on the opposite side of the law, accused of sexually assaulting a teenage boy. 34-year-old Elizabeth Blanchard was arrested for the shocking crime on October 30th. Law enforcement was reportedly notified of the alleged sexual abuse in late August, but according to court documents, the 15-year-old had been seeing Blanchard since mid-June. According to reports, the teen was a client of Epic Behavioral Health Care where Blanchard worked. The 15-year-old was supposed to be in group counseling, but reportedly got into trouble, so the visits became one-on-one. The teen told detectives initially Blanchard would only flirt with him or call and text him. Then everything escalated when Blanchard began to kiss the teen and even allegedly asked to perform oral sex. But during the investigation, more shocking allegations would surface. According to the 15-year-old boy, he told detectives he and Blanchard would have unprotected sex on multiple occasions. On one occasion, Blanchard allegedly rented a hotel room for the two of them. Investigators reportedly reviewed surveillance video of the hotel on August 10th, which allegedly showed Blanchard and the teen entering a room shortly after 12:30 p.m. Then both left the room a little more than half an hour later. Then she returned by herself about 18 minutes later. And they would allegedly meet outside of her working hours, where on different occasions, police say she provided the teen with vape pens and alcohol. But those aren't the only so-called gifts Blanchard gave the teen. She reportedly would try to send money to the boy, anywhere from $5 to a reported $9,000. And she allegedly set up a Cash App account for the teen and would send him money through that platform and Apple Cash. According to authorities, digital evidence was also recovered. Blanchard allegedly sent the boy about 50 nude photos either via text or on Snapchat. However, according to court documents, none of the saved photos would be classified as harmful material. But on August 15th, Blanchard allegedly texted the teen, "Switch to Snap and delete this, please, babe." Now she faces 9 felony charges, including lewd or lascivious battery on a victim between 12 to 16, sexual battery on a victim under 18 by a custodian, and use of a two-way communication device to facilitate a felony. But according to a report by Action News Jax, this isn't the first time Blanchard had gotten in trouble for inappropriate behavior. We cover a lot of really disturbing stories here at Law&Crime, and part of the reason we're able to keep bringing you this story plus so much more is because of our sponsors like Upside. So if you're wondering what's Upside, well, it's a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and restaurants. Sometimes I only have time for a quick lunch break, but then there are times I can have a nice sit down at a restaurant and I can use Upside for both. Plus, I can use Upside to get cash back when I do. It's so easy and simple to use and completely free, so why not? And this is actual real cash back too. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So here's what you do. You download the Upside app, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or a credit card and follow the steps on the app to get paid. You can use Upside at places like Chipotle, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell, and so many other places. So why not check it out and see if your favorite spot is on the app? To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on your screen. Use our promo code LCNews and get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Again, that's promo code LCNews for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. According to the report by Action News Jax, Blanchard, who worked at Epic Behavioral Health Care, a community behavioral health organization that offers mental health services, was difficult to work with, according to one employee, and allegedly had to move facilities at least once. According to an email obtained by the outlet, company leaders say Blanchard had been fired from her position even before she was criminally charged for walking off campus with a minor client. In a statement after Blanchard's arrest, the CEO of Epic Behavioral Health Care wrote in part, quote, "We are shocked and dismayed by the actions of our former employee. The behavior in question goes against the values and standards of our company, and we do not tolerate such misconduct in any form. The well-being and integrity of our clients and employees are of utmost importance to us, and we will take all necessary steps to ensure their well-being and security," end quote. Following Blanchard's arrest, Epic also shared a list of actions that are being implemented following her firing, which include installing additional cameras. Policies for engaging with underage clients have been revised and require at least 2 employees to be present for any activities, competency screenings for pre-hires, and background screenings through Florida's Department of Children and Families. According to Epic, Blanchard's alleged actions were the first in the company's 50-year history that something like this had ever happened. And 50 years without issue is a long time. So let's bring on psychologist Dr. John Delatorre to get his take on this disturbing case. Dr. Delatorre, thank you so much for joining me today. What's your reaction to hearing an employee at a behavioral health organization is accused of sexually abusing one of the clients, and not just any client, but a 15-year-old boy?
You know what? Honestly, I'm not surprised. When we look at the amount of complaints that psychologists receive from the public, it is still primarily crossing the sexual boundary is the number one complaint that the public sends to a licensing board. So I'm not surprised to hear these kinds of things happening when it comes to a psychologist and a client. What is surprising to me is the gender dynamics between the two, with a female psychologist and a young male client. It's not common, but I think what the media has shown is that it certainly happens with a lot more frequency than we had initially thought that it does.
And in this case, the allegations are pretty disturbing. Like many of the other stories that we cover here at Law and Crime, mainly the ones that involve teachers, the pattern seems to be the same. First, it begins with flirting, then texting and calling, then it escalates to kissing and sex. And in this case, Blanchard allegedly had sex with this teen multiple times unprotected. What are your thoughts on this grooming pattern that escalated, into sexual abuse?
It's a common pattern, right? This is the kind of thing. It doesn't matter sort of what your vocation is or anything like that. The real concern is the abuse of power, right? Whether it's a doctor or a nurse or a teacher or a psychologist, these individuals are supposed to have authority, and they're supposed to recognize how their authority can demonstrate a power imbalance. And for a psychologist, especially, you would think that she would have more insight to be more aware of number one, the behaviors that she's doing, and number two, what the cause of the behaviors really is. You know, a lot of people they look at psychologists as attempting to excuse away someone's behaviors. That's not my job. My job isn't to provide some kind of excuse. My job is to explain why do these things happen. And from a psychological perspective, I mean, we see this happening fairly regularly. The bigger concern is the abuse of power that is associated with doing this. And the psychologist should have the insight to recognize, wait a minute, something's going on with me. I need to check what I'm doing so that I cannot create a victim.
And continuing on about that abuse of power, from some of the reports I've seen, it appears that Epic, in addition to being a substance and mental health counseling or a place to go for mental health counseling, it also appears this is a place you go when you're court ordered to as well too. So adding with that different layer that this teen might have also just been a vulnerable patient, and Blanchard, if the allegations are true, did abuse that power to allegedly abuse this teen boy. What is your reaction, especially given just how vulnerable these patients or clients are?
And that's the key word, is the vulnerability. You know, I can easily see her coming across, and during her case, or telling police officers or anyone who's asking her that this person that the child came on to her, right? That this child was completely aware and attempted to seduce me, right? All these different kinds of excuses, but she's still the adult, right? She's still the psychologist. She still should be aware of what exactly it is that's going on. Whatever a teen boy is doing, that's what teen boys do. She's an adult woman that should have known better. She's an adult woman who recognized the authority, the vulnerability, right? She should have recognized all of these other influences that were occurring, and making sure that if she was not prepared to handle what this kid was throwing at her, to refer to someone else that is better equipped to make sure that those boundaries don't get crossed.
And it appears there were also some issues with Blanchard that even prompted her firing prior to the allegations coming to light. She allegedly walked off campus with a minor client. It's not clear if the alleged 15-year-old victim, or if it was another child that Blanchard allegedly walked off with. But what do you make of that? And does that indicate to you there might have been potentially or possibly more victims?
Yeah, it's not uncommon. You know, you think of sexual offenders, and sometimes the court case only has one victim, but in reality, they have four to five to maybe even seven victims. So I'm not surprised that if it is a different minor, I'm not surprised by that. I wouldn't be surprised if she had attempted this over a longer period of time and got this far with this case, but maybe not as far in other cases.
And I think a lot of times when we cover these types of stories, the first thing that always comes to my mind is why? Why do they allegedly do this? And then doing a deep dive onto social media, it appears Blanchard is a mother herself to a young boy. What's your reaction and why do you think she allegedly did this?
I mean, listen, humans have human needs, and humans have frailties, and humans make mistakes, right? It's more about recognizing how you are uh, manifesting those problems in the real world. Everyone has issues that they are confronting, and most people aren't aware of the help that they actually need in order to overcome those obstacles. She should have been aware. She should have recognized that she was feeling vulnerable, that she was feeling desperate, that she was believing things that this boy was doing in terms of his behaviors that he wasn't actually doing, that she was misinterpreting everything that was going on around her. She should have recognized that she's at fault for this. And it's concerning how much authority she had for a long period of time and how many potential victims she could potentially have.
And it seems kind of leading up to this, it appears that in a way she was kind of acting recklessly a little bit. She's sending money to this teenager through Apple Pay, Cash App, and she's caught on surveillance video in a hotel where she allegedly had sex with this teenage boy. Then investigators recovered texts and photographs of her sending nude pictures. In your opinion, do you think these alleged abusers and alleged perpetrators don't think that they'll be caught when they do something so brazen like this?
I think for the most part, it is that they don't think that they're going to be caught. I think when it comes to women who engage in this kind of sexual boundary crossing, they've convinced themselves that this is an actual relationship. They've convinced themselves that what is happening is consensual. And so it's not surprising that when we hear of a woman crossing a sexual boundary with a minor, they're often fairly close in age. It's very rare for a woman to abuse someone who's under the age of, let's say, 10, right? They're often older teenagers. So in their minds, they can justify their behaviors by saying that this is a consensual relationship. It's still an excuse, right? It's still a justification. It's still a lie. It's still not true. But it's why they can come across as being so brazen and so reckless because they don't believe what they're doing is wrong.
And always, my mind always goes to the alleged victims in this case. And I'm, of course, having to say the word alleged. But what do you think it could be like for the teen boy to be going through all of this? I mean, he's 15 years old, went to the behavioral health center probably for a particular reason. How does he recover from this?
Slowly but surely. It's one of those things where you have to recognize as the child that no matter what was said to you by your abuser, you are not at fault. Whatever it is that you did, whatever behaviors that you engaged in, you were still 15 years old. You're still not well developed. You're still maturing. There's still so many things that this person, the abuser, is going to try to use against you, and recognize that you didn't do anything wrong, despite whatever reasons why you may be there. You didn't do anything wrong in this scenario. And I think children are more resilient, teenagers are more resilient than I think we give them credit for. But it's still going to necessitate some kind of treatment with someone who can keep an appropriate boundary and who can teach the minor what exactly are appropriate sexual boundaries when it comes to adults and when it comes to peers their own age or even younger.
And obviously, we don't know the name of the alleged victim in this case, but say this teenage boy doesn't have a support system. In your opinion, can he still recover the same way?
Yeah, I can still recover the same. A lot of recovery just is about your own personal wants, your own personal will, what your own personal coping resources. Now, that doesn't mean that outside supports can't bolster you, but that's really what it is. Is that it's a crutch, it's a support, right? It's scaffolding. It's teaching you by someone else, but it's really incumbent upon you. And if he wants to be better, then he can absolutely be better.
And Epic Behavioral Health also has said that they're going to be implementing new rules following the allegations, like installing additional cameras, but they won't record the group sessions or anything like that. They're also changing their policies when it comes to engaging with underage clients. Now they're going to be having two employees that must be present at all times. and they're going to be doing competency screenings for pre hires. In your opinion, is that enough?
Enough, maybe. If someone wants to cross a sexual boundary, no matter all of the target hardening that you do, they're going to cross that sexual boundary. They will find a way to get that done. I think it's more about how do we train our professionals to recognize when they are vulnerable to crossing a behavior. It's ongoing training, it's ongoing recognition. And I know a lot of people, professionals, psychologists roll their eyes about how often that they need to hear that it's inappropriate to have sex with a client, but there's a reason for that. And it's like I said, beginning, that this is still the most common complaint that the public has when it comes to a psychologist, crossing sexual boundaries. So we have to keep talking about it. We have to make sure that as a society, we're also able of talking about appropriate sexual health, appropriate sexual boundaries, what is appropriate sexual behaviors across all genders, across all sexes, across every single age dynamic that you can think of. We need to be talking about sex in a healthy way. That's the real way in which we can prevent offending behavior.
And if you were given your expertise to parents who do have to send their children to this program, what kind of advice would you be giving them in terms of possible warning signs to look out for? Obviously, not all psychiatrists and therapists are acting in this way, but in the case that there is just that outlier there, what is your advice that you're giving to parents?
Yeah, so it's important that the parents recognize that there's supposed to be a close bond between the client and the therapist. That's how the work happens. So you want your child to talk about their therapist openly. You want them to talk about them as if they have built an established rapport. But when it moves outside of the therapeutic sessions, right? When it's happening outside of the hour that therapy is supposed to be, once it starts happening overnight, right? There's no reason why a therapist should be talking to their client at 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. That shouldn't be happening. Once you start seeing that there's more to this relationship than just a professional one, that there's more to this relationship than just, you know, two people talking about the problems. When you start seeing that things are happening outside of what would be considered normal business hours, that's when you need to start checking in, saying, and going to the therapist number one and talking to them about why exactly are they communicating outside of what would be typical for this kind of situation.
Right. Dr. John Delatorre, excellent insight. I really appreciate your time. Before we sign you off, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's still important to recognize that while we hear about these cases more regularly, they don't happen as often as the media would portray them to be. If you believe in, if you want your child to have a strong relationship, allow the space for that relationship between them and their therapist to happen. It's when you start noticing weird things, that's when things start, you have to start raising your eyebrows. But otherwise, it's not likely to happen to your child.
All right. Dr. John Delatorre, again, thank you so much for your insight on this story. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Online records show Elizabeth Blanchard is still behind bars in the St. Johns County Jail awaiting transfer to Putnam County and is being held on a more than $250,000 bond. If she's released from jail, she's reportedly ordered to have no contact with the victim. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.